language teaching, literature, and translation on global perspective. Today we have two plenary sessions with Professor Sri Wuli Fitriati from Universitas Negeri Semarang. Good morning, Prof. Wuli.
Good morning, Bu Ella.
And we also have a plenary session with Dr. Abdul Muhammad Ali Jinnah from Jamal Muhammad College in affiliation with Bharati Dasan University, and also a parallel session. And without any further ado, it is with pleasure that I'm about to hand over my microphone to the moderator of the fourth plenary session, Dr. Sri Wahyuni, who will be furthermore the person in charge of the discussion. Ibu Yuni, the time is completely yours.
Thank you very much, Ibu Ella. Am I audible?
Yes, Ibu.
Yes, Ibu. Thank you. Right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, Honorable our speaker, Professor Sri Wuli Fitriati, PhD. Salam sehat selalu, Prof.
Good morning, Bu Yuni.
Morning, distinguished guests, presenters, and participants, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the fourth plenary sessions. I'm Sri Wahyuni, and it is a great honor for me to be the moderator of the fourth plenary sessions of the 12th UNES Virtual International Conference on English Language Teaching, Literature, and Translations. Ladies and gentlemen, before we listen to Prof. Wuli's presentations, allow me to read her brief bio note. Ibu Sri Wuli Fitriati, Ibu Wuli for short, is a professor of English Language Education at the English Language Education Study Program, Faculty of Languages and Arts, Universitas Negeri Semarang, UNES. She has been teaching at UNES since 2005 and obtained her doctorate from the University of Southern Queensland, USQ, Australia in 2015. She teaches Introduction to Discourse, Discourse Studies, and Advanced Discourse Studies courses for undergraduate, master's degree students, and doctoral students respectively. Her research articles on discourse studies concerning the teaching of English as a foreign language have been published in some international reputable journals and national accredited journals. Books, including edited books published in 2020 up to 2022, or some of them, Discourse Studies in English Language Education, Conceptual Applications of Discourse Studies in the Teaching of English as a Foreign Language in the Indonesian Context, Systemic Functional Linguistics and its Applications in English Language Teaching, an Introduction to Systemic Functional Linguistics for undergraduate and master students of English Language Education. Her works, in the forms of articles, can also be accessed in Google Scholar, Sinta, and Scopus. She has served as a supervisor in her students' final projects, thesis, and also dissertations. In addition, she is a reviewer in two Scopus Q1 Index journals, Journal of Language, Identity, and Education by Taylor and Francis Group UK, and Journal of Multilingual and Multicultural Development, Routledge UK. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a short bio note of Professor Wuli. Before the presentation begins, let me tell you how this session will go. First, Professor Wuli will have the presentations for about 45 minutes. Following that, we will have a question and answer sessions and discussions for about 15 minutes. And finally, the session will be ended by a closing remark from Professor Wuli. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, now please welcome Professor Wuli to speak about teaching lexical bundles, an example from an academic writing class for EFL University students. Honorable Prof. Wuli, time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Dr. Yuni, for the kind introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear presenters and participants of ELTLT Conference Day 2. Thank you so much for joining my session today in this early Sunday, and I hope it is a nice Sunday for you and me. Well, let me share screen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yes, Ibu Yuni, is it clear enough?
Yes, very clear, Prof.
Yeah, okay. Well, Bapak, Ibu, participants and presenters, in this very good opportunity, I would like to share with you part of my experience in teaching academic writing at university levels, especially for students majoring in English language education. So the title of my presentation is Teaching Lexical Bundles, an example from an academic writing class for EFL University students. As you can see from the title of my talk today, the keywords are teaching, lexical bundles, academic writing class, and EFL University students. So I hope you can get the overview, Bapak Ibu, what I'm going to talk about today. And I formulate the main purpose of my presentation today is to explain or to describe what are lexical bundles, why is it important to teach lexical bundles, and how to teach lexical bundles, especially in academic writing classes. However, Bapak Ibu, this is not a prescriptive one. What I'm trying to present here is an alternative way of helping our students to improve and develop their linguistic repertoire. Yeah, because actually our students have a double burden, Bapak Ibu. They are thinking about the substance or the materials of their writing, and also they have to think about how to use the English language as their foreign language accurately and also naturally. Yes, well, Bu Yuni and ladies and gentlemen, this is a starting point. This is a mini exercise. I would like you to identify, just guess, yeah, based on your knowledge from this article, especially in the abstract section of a journal article, and this is literature review article. Can you please read silently but fast? And can you please identify what phrases that you think belongs to lexical bundles? Perhaps you can unmute the audio if you would like to respond me, or just type in the chat box. Anyone would have a try, please? Or perhaps Ibu Yuni, do you have any idea from this abstract? Which one or which ones that in linguistic term, we call them a lexical bundle or lexical bundles?
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Uli. Let me try.
Okay.
Probably the phrase in the first line, by examining relevant research articles, and also the second line, the literature review article attempted to shed light on, and then also okay, while there have been extensive studies on, yeah, some of them. Probably. Thank you.
Excellent. You got 100 from me, Ibu.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with your linguistic background knowledge, I'm sure Ibu Yuni can identify what we call a lexical bundle or lexical bundles. Well, oh yeah, we have an answer from the chat box. Yeah, thank you. Ibu Ira Mutiara replied, one of the lexical bundles is the research suggests that. Thank you so much, Ibu Ira, for your response. Yeah, so let us check whether your answers are the same as the highlighted ones here. Okay, by examining relevant research articles, the literature review article attempted to shed light on, well, there have been extensive studies on, so Bu Juni, you are correct. It remained the previous studies had consistently confirmed, and the research suggests that this is Bu Ira's answer. And the last, furthermore, the research calls for, okay, so dear Bapak Ibu, so based on this identification or introduction, we can see that what the thing that we are going to talk about is these ones, yeah, the phrases, the formulaic expressions that usually used by native speakers, especially in the genre of academic writing. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mary Jane has talked a lot about genre, yeah, on the first day of this conference. Well, now I'd like to outline my presentation into introduction. We have just done that. And then what and why lexical bundles, how to teach lexical bundles, but in this case, I'm going to share with you part of my experience, yeah, the study that I conducted with a team of researchers and conclusions. Well, now, lexical bundles comes from two words, lexical and bundles. Yeah, perhaps some of you who come from Java, I am Javanese. Yeah, this word bundle adapted into bundle. Yeah, sak bundle or satu bundle. Yeah, it means a group. Yeah, so a group and lexical related to words. So we can guess that lexical bundles is something related with a group of words. Yeah, some experts in linguistics define that lexical bundles are the most frequently recurring sequence of words, according to Biber and Barbary. Lexical bundles are formulaic sequences. Lexical bundles are formulaic language expressions. Lexical bundles are special type of recurrent word combinations. Lexical bundles are three or more words that frequently occur in a particular register, and these combinations of words must reoccur repeatedly in order to be considered as lexical bundles. So in these slides, I'm going to use abbreviation LBs, yeah, for lexical bundles to save the space. Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Still about the definition of lexical bundles, Bapak Ibu. From Highland and Jiang in 2018, they give the definition of lexical bundles are multi-words expressions, extended collocations which appear more frequently than expected by chance, helping to shape meanings and contributing to our sense of coherence and a distinctiveness in a text. Lexical bundles are frequent multi-word combinations as a way of assisting communication. Once again, assisting communication, because with these lexical bundles, our job as English language learners are just memorize them, yeah, because that's the way the native speaker use the expressions. And lexical bundles are prefabricated phrases. While Su and Si, yeah, give definition, lexical bundles are recurrent word sequences that may be structurally incomplete, but they serve important communicative functions. So, Bapak Ibu, the identification that we have just done in the exercise, yeah, previously, you can have the feeling that each lexical bundle has a specific function. For example, the lexical bundle the research suggests that so the function is giving a suggestion. Yeah, so that's what we call communicative function. Now, why lexical bundles are important? Let me share here what Celsa Murcia explained a lot about communicative competence in her chapter titled Rethinking the Role of Communicative Competence in Language Teaching. Mariana Celsa Murcia talk a lot deeply about the concept of communicative competence. I'm sure that Bapak Ibu agree the main goal, excuse me for a while, the main goal of teaching English as a foreign language in Indonesia, or perhaps other foreign languages, Arabic, Mandarin, or even English speakers learn Indonesian language, the main purpose of teaching a language or learning a language is, of course, to achieve communicative competence. Communicative competence is the competencies or the abilities, of course, to communicate. And according to Celsa Murcia, there are some competencies which create the communicative competence. One of them is formulaic competence, the one that I move the cursor, yeah, Bapak Ibu, formulaic competence. So what I'm trying to say is that lexical bundles, the formulaic language belongs to this formulaic competence. Formulaic competence is the ability or knowledge of language users to use the fixed expressions, the fixed language expressions. So that's why it is very important, because it will build up language users' competence in using the language. I hope this is clear enough up to this stage. Okay, now we back to here. Why lexical bundles important? According to Munir and Granger, some researchers have discovered, have agreed that lexical bundles lead to improvement in second language students' writing in English, yeah, as it is part of instructional program. And lexical bundles seem to reflect a part of language users' communicative competence. Like lexical bundles pervasive in academic language use and also a key component of fluency, because it functions as like knitting arguments. So it functions as discourse markers. Now, about why is it important? Yeah, for example, research done by Fo, Allen, Smith, and friends, yeah, in different years of studies, Fo found out that lexical bundles, means lexical knowledge, is very significant in developing stage of writing ability. Also, they are important for the language production in general and academic writing in particular. Lexical bundles also facilitate communication, facilitate social interaction, facilitate gaining a communicative competence, yeah, as Celsa Murcia mentioned, and second language academic literacy acquisition. So in short, lexical bundles are crucial because it helps language learners be fluent in linguistic production and as a key factor in successful language learning. So why we, lecturers, teachers, need teaching lexical bundles? Because by gaining theoretical knowledge of lexical bundles, will help, yeah, based on my experiences. I have been teaching academic writing since 2005, before that, yeah. So I am really aware that I need to help my students to broaden their linguistic repertoire, especially in the vocabulary. And the vocabulary that what I mean in the context of this presentation is lexical bundles. So lexical bundles improve the quality of students' academic writing, Bapak Ibu, and also improve the flow of information in their academic writing, improve the use of fluent, natural, and accurate language. Okay, so now we come to the theory that Highland and Jiang mentioned or explained in their articles in 2018. Excuse me for just screenshot the table here in my slide, but I already acknowledge the source, yeah, Bapak Ibu. According to Highland and Jiang, there are some classification of lexical bundles, especially in academic writing. So Bapak Ibu, lexical bundles, not only in written language, but also in a spoken language. That's another matter, yeah. I'm just trying to give you some information that lexical bundles are not only in written language, but also in spoken language, just like what Ibu Dr. Yuni and I and a team of researchers did several years ago. We analyzed the use of lexical bundles in spoken language. Yeah, perhaps later on you can check in the Google Scholar or in the internet some of our articles related to lexical bundles. Now let me go on with this. So Highland and Jiang categorize classification of forward lexical bundles in academic writing. There are three categories. Verb phrase related bundles, bundles which related to verb phrase. For example, passive verb is shown in figure, can be noted that is the number of these experts categorize this lexical bundle as verb phrase related bundles. And then the second category, clause related bundles, for example, anticipatory aid. It is important it follows that and so on, yeah. And the last category, bundles which related to noun or preposition related. For example, the nature of the case of the fact that the extent to which, okay, these categories of lexical bundles based on the structure, susunannya, the structure of lexical bundles. Furthermore, Helen and Jiang also categorized the functions of lexical bundles, Bapak Ibu. There are three categories: research-oriented. Okay, let me make it bigger. Oh, this is too big. Yeah, research-oriented, for example, location indicating time and place at the same time, in the present study, the use of the role of this what we call Highland and Jiang as research-oriented lexical bundles, while those belongs to text-oriented bundles are, for example, on the other hand, in addition to, etc. Okay. Yeah, now I'd like to share the present study that I and some colleagues did in the class in relation to give intervention to our students in academic writing class. I'd like to explain first why is it academic writing class. Well, Bapak Ibu, I hope you agree with me that students at the university level, are expected to be able to write a research report perhaps in any courses. Yeah. So usually by the end of the semester, the students are required to submit a paper as an outcome of a course. So in this case, I tried to make alignment between what I taught in the classroom and what they needed in other courses. So the needs analysis that I did is that majority of the students said to me that, ma'am, we do not know how to make literature review. We don't understand why is it important for us to review or to make summaries of articles first before we make a research proposal. That's some of the curhat, some of the, what they explained to me, yeah, in the classroom. So as I explained here, that students at the university must write articles, critiques, reviews, and argumentative text. So that's why they need to be assisted to make a text with sound academic by giving them the learning materials. Those are lexical bundles. Yes. Yes, I move directly to this objective of the instruction, the teaching instruction in the classes that, well, hopefully, I hope I have raised students' awareness of the use of lexical bundles in improving their writing. And I also intended to help students to improve their fluency and accuracy in their academic writing, and also examine, yeah, as self-reflection for myself, how the effects of instructing lexical bundles on them. And also I would like to know how their perceptions after being taught lexical bundles to enhance their literature review assignments. Well, Bapak Ibu, I hope you are still there with me. Now, the context of the study, again, I have explained the academic writing class at the English language department. Now we have two study programs: English Language Education Department Study Program and English Literature Study Program. The one that I did is in English Literature Department. Undergraduate students, they were the fourth semester in the academic year of 2020-2023, consists of 26 or 27, I forgot. And this one, the learning objective, participants, yeah, audience, the learning objective, the course learning objective, let me read here, the students will gain an understanding of communicative purposes, linguistic features, and generic structure of literature review. Students will be familiarized with the structure of academic writing. So at UNES, the CPMK, Capaian Pembelajaran Mata Kuliah, we adhere to the government's documents that in RPS, Rencana Pembelajaran Semester, there must be three aspects: knowledge, behavior, and skills. Therefore, by the end of the semester, in the skills aspect, students, the outcome of the academic writing class is the students able to write a literature review, particularly review of previous studies, not literature review on theories, but a literature review on previous studies. And of course, because they are English literature department, the assignments that I give to them to review any previous studies on literature research based on their interests. Okay, so student learning outcome is writing a literature review assignment. This one I screenshot copy paste from RPS owned by our department. Yeah. Okay, now, yes. So this is a qualitative case study, Ibu Bapak. As I mentioned, the participants are the fourth semester students at the English Literature Study Program, academic writing class, and the source of data are students' literature review assignments. And I was very grateful. I was helped by 4 interrogators who helped me in assessing the students' writings, in this case, the students' literature review. Well, Bapak Ibu, let me describe a bit what I did in the class. So these steps of teaching learning cycle, of course, were not done in 1 or 2 meetings, Bapak Ibu, but during the semesters. So I adapted a teaching learning cycle from Spatial 2017. Yeah, there are 5 stages. First, building the field, exploring the structure and language of text types. The third step, jointly constructing text, and then independently constructing text. Finally, reflecting on one's own written text. Meanwhile, I also adapted what Spicer suggests us, about teaching learning cycle in our class. I also adapt some steps from Darawianka and Jones, Humphrey and friends, what we call teaching learning cycle or text-based approach. Building knowledge, modeling of the text, joint construction, and independent construction. I'm going to talk this one by one briefly, but inshallah clearly. So I move here, Bapak Ibu, to building knowledge of the field. In the building knowledge of the field, Bapak Ibu, it's very urgent, it's very important. As a lecturer, we have questioning skills, questioning strategy skills, how to make our students, first of all, interested in our class. Yeah. So it's not suddenly asking them to make a review or asking them to do one assignment. Yeah. I'm afraid that will discourage our students. Oh, academic writing class is very difficult. That's not what I want from my students. So the first is I dig up their motivation, what they have learned so far, what they have known so far about academic writing. So I make a kind of dialogue questioning. Okay, so this is what we called, according to the expert, building the field, building knowledge of the field. So the keyword is here, we build the students' prior knowledge before they can write effectively. Then we help them by giving some model text. We ask them to read, but the kind of reading is supported reading. We do not just, I did not just let them read by themselves, but it's kind of whole class discussion. Because in this case, the students need authentic academic writing vocabulary. Again, authentic academic writing vocabulary that satisfies their academic writing needs. So that's why I took selected model text taken from journal articles. And Bapak Ibu, if it is possible, please take your own publication. Because my research showed that most of the students feel satisfied, feel something like glad to read the lecturer's publications as the model text in the classroom. So in bahasa Indonesia, we can say, oh, dosen saya juga bisa menulis sendiri kok, tidak hanya menyuruh-nyuruh. Yeah. So that's why it is very important for us to give them a model text, if it is possible, taken from your own publication, and then ask them to read and identify the generic structure, and then help them to identify what they think belongs to lexical bundles. Next, the next step, modeling of the text. Well, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the references that I use in my academic writing class. The book is called, the book's title is Academic Phrase Bank. I think I need to show you the book. You can download it for free. Wait a minute, please. Academic writing. Not RPS, sorry. Excuse me for a moment, it's still loading, Bapak Ibu. What I'm trying to show you is the academic phrase bank. This one. Yeah, Ibu Yuni and others, can you see this?
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, Bapak Ibu, this book that I downloaded from the internet for free is one of the references that we can use as an alternative references, ya Bapak Ibu, in teaching academic writing. So because the focus of my discussion today is literature review assignments. So when I show this book to my students, we directly go to pages 13 to 18. Page 13 to 18. Okay. Though they of course can learn other lexical bundles from other subsections of a journal. So here, Bapak Ibu, we learn these formulaic expressions, these lexical bundles as model. Of course, the students have to adopt based on the context of their review. Okay, this one. So it really helps them. Okay, now I back to my presentation. Yeah, this is what I called modeling of the text. Now, in the modeling of the text, why it is urgent to give a model text to our students? Of course, Bapak Ibu, because it will support students to build their knowledge and skills via actual reading samples. So our students, in this case, my students, need to be explored with many samples of journal articles, especially articles which consist of one section literature review. So to make them familiar with academic writing. Okay. So the students were exposed to examples of lexical bundles and given a published paper. As I mentioned, if it is possible from your own publications to identify instances how professional writers use them. And yes, in this research, one of the model texts that I provided to my students is the research article that that was authored by me and a co-author. So they also feel motivated to see their own lecturers' work. That's what I mean, Bapak Ibu. Now, still modeling of the text, well, Bapak Ibu, English literature study program or English literature department has a journal article, Rainbow, Rainbow, the Journal of Literature, Linguistics, and Culture Studies, published by English Literature Program, accredited Sintas 3. So I think this is a good journal to show to my students that, well, these samples of how professional writers need their arguments in the literature review. And then how to identify the lexical bundles. First of all, the procedure to identify the lexical bundles was done manual categorization based on the feelings, the instincts, the linguistic background of the students. So they identify recurrent multi-word expressions relevant to writing of academic writing. They make highlight in the literature review article. Okay, so the first step is identification, and then we discuss together in the classroom. And also these identifications of lexical bundles also, let's say, validated or confirmed by the expert judgment, in this case, peer investigators, for lecturers, investigators. Now, on the step of guided practice, each student selected a research-based article according. So the first one asked them to read one article, they make summary to be familiar with the genetic structure, what's the purpose of that literature review. So after that, they identify the lexical bundles in the section by giving yellow highlight. Oh, sorry, this is double. Sorry, this one. After that, Bapak Ibu, I give them opportunity to do joint construction. They can work together with friends, discuss about the flow of information of their text. So the class was a little bit ramai, noisy, because I asked them to speak a lot, not hesitated in discussing with their friends. And the independent construction, of course, the literature review assignment must be submitted individually. Okay, so this takes a process, Bapak Ibu. In order to produce one product of literature review, it takes process. Yeah, so it's not just asking them 1 week or 2 weeks, no, but the steps that I did need a process. Okay. And this is some findings that, yeah, well, I'm aware that there is some increase in students' awareness. Yeah, I am aware that my students now become aware and interest in using lexical bundles, and lexical bundles added coherence, formality and unity to their writing, and also this intervention in the academic writing class make them familiarized with academic writing, while at the same time also introducing them to rhetorical structures of a journal article. Okay, this is the findings. Well, I'm not saying that this is, let's say, the process that I did in my class is the perfect one. No, once again, what become my concern is that as a lecturer of academic writing, we do not only ask them to write or give assignment, but also help them to have linguistic repertoire, to have a big stock of vocabulary. Of course, it is important to use appropriate teaching techniques or appropriate teaching strategies, but I think the most important is also what learning materials that we give to our students so they have enough exposure and able to write. That's what the intention of this discussion, Ibu Bapak. Well, I quote some perceptions from the students. So the English words, the English sentences that I copy paste here from Rina and Jessa are real their English. So I do not make any correction on their grammar. Let me read, for example, this one, 3 from 3. I learned about something called lexical bundle, which are groups of words that are often used together. I realized that I have used them before without knowing what they were. Oh, so it means that 3 actually have used these expressions, but she did not realize that what she picked up in her writing is called lexical bundle. I realized that I have used them before without knowing what they were. This research helped me understand what lexical bundles are and why they are important to be aware of. Later, I will use this knowledge to improve my academic writing and speaking skills. I think this is a good point. Well, yes, Bapak Ibu, this is the conclusions of my presentation. Hopefully I have covered what I promised to you at the beginning of the talk. Yeah, I promised to talk about what are lexical bundles and why is it important. And I hope I have explained, even though it's very brief, but inshallah clear enough how to teach lexical bundles, especially in writing class. So the closing remarks is that things to consider in teaching lexical bundles to improve academic writing. Students do writing tasks. Students learn from the input provided by the lecturer or other sources. Input here can mean model text. Therefore, Ibu Bapak, ladies and gentlemen, input really matters. Yeah, so the recommendation is that hopefully Bapak Ibu can examine lexical bundles in other genres of written or spoken text to enrich students' repertoire of formulaic English language use to achieve the goal of learning the language. Because once again, the main goal of teaching English, the main goal of learning English is to be able to use the language, to be able to use the language in spoken and written mode. Yes, these are some references, dear participants, that I use in this slide in my discussion. Perhaps if you are interested, you can go further by checking in the internet these references. And finally, I thank the fourth semester students of English literature in the academic year 2022-2023 English Language Department of UNES for their contributions to this research. I also thank for lecturers from different universities who assisted me in writing the students' texts and for their invaluable comments on my findings. Allow me to mention the name Ibu Ira Mutiara Ningrum from Politeknik Negeri Sambas, Ibu Nurmala Hendrawati from Universitas Indrapasta PGRI Jakarta, Ibu Lilis Suryani from IKIP Siliwangi Bandung, dan Bapak Muhammad Rizky Adi Pratama from Universitas Ngudi Waluyo. Thank you so much for giving me alternative interpretations on the findings of the research, Ibu and Bapak. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this simple share about what I have done in my academic writing class. Thank you so much, Bapak Ibu. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I welcome any comments on constructive feedback on this discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Yuni.
Thank you very much, Prof. Uli,
Welcome.
for giving such a comprehensive, inspiring, and insightful talk. And I hope that Prof. Uli's talk today inspires our students, master doctoral program, who are probably still confused about what to write for their thesis, dissertation, research project by taking both spoken and written discourse as mentioned previously by Prof. Uli. All right, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the Q&A and discussion sessions, and I'd like to give a chance to 3 questioners first. You may raise your hand and directly address questions to Prof. Uli, or probably you want to write your questions in the chat box.
Perhaps I explained it too fast, yeah, Ibu Yuni.
No, Prof. Uli. Okay, questions please, Bapak Ibu.
Perhaps comments on what I have done, what I did in my class, or perhaps you have some alternative ideas, Bapak Ibu, you can share your experience.
Yeah, probably. All right, so Ibu Dwi Setiorini. Okay, so please Ibu Dwi Setiorini, you can mention your name and your institution and address your question directly to Prof. Uli, please. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for the time given to me, Ibu Yuni. My name is Dwi Setiorini. I'm from UNES. I'm as a program in English department. First of all, I'd like to give appreciation, a great appreciation for Prof. Uli. It's a very great presentation, Prof. I'm here. I'm as an English teacher in SMA 2 Tegal. And now I am your students in UNES to get my master degree. And it's very nice for me to listen to your presentation and talking about lexical bundles. It gave me some kind of refresh my knowledge about lexical bundle. And I'm sure that this knowledge will help me to write my thesis next semester, I hope. And my question is, you know, that in teaching writing in senior high school, do you think that we have to teach our students in senior high school about lexical bundles, and what strategy what is the best strategy for us as a teacher to teach them about lexical bundles. You know that a half of my students still confused about how to arrange the words in a good sentence. I think do we still need to explain them and teach them about lexical bundles, or maybe what kind of lexical bundles or the simple one can we teach to our students in senior high school? Thank you so much.
Prof. Wuli, will you directly
Yeah,
respond to the question?
Yes, thank you so much, Ibu Dr. Yuni. Thank you so much, Ibu or Mbak Dwi Setiorini. And first of all, I wish you a very best luck for your thesis proposal writing this coming semester. And thank you for saying that this session gives you some inspirations on your research topics. And second, about how to teach lexical bundles in senior high school level. First of all, Mbak Dwi Setiorini and others, I would like to highlight that this knowledge about the academic term lexical bundles is mostly for us as teachers. We do not need to say explicitly, especially in senior high school level, by saying lexical bundles, because it will make them afraid or frightened. Yeah. So again, we do not need to say something like in the beginning of your class, Mbak Setiorini, well, students, today we are going to learn about lexical bundles. No, that's not what I mean. Yeah, but this knowledge is as us as our teacher, yeah, as teacher. So as I explained or emphasized, the first thing first is to give model text. Yeah, so instead of asking them to write for descriptive text at SMA or not, Ibu? Descriptive text. Okay,
Yes.
so for example, you are going to teach a descriptive text. So please do not directly test them, asking them to write a descriptive text suddenly. You just come into the classroom and then you want to play with your mobile phone, and then you ask them to please write a descriptive text into paragraphs about your mother or your father. No, they need you to give them model text. So give them some sample text, 1 or 2, and then together guided reading, the next step, guided reading, asking them which words that they are familiar already. Instead of asking them which words that they do not know, you can ask which words that they have known already, familiar with, and then step by step, sentence by sentence, with your knowledge, linguistic knowledge as an English teacher, you tell them that this one is what we call lexical bundle. Or in bahasa Indonesia, ini biasanya orang bule atau English native speaker menyampaikannya. For example, descriptive text of a person usually start with what phrase, Ibu? Descriptive text on a person? I'm going to tell you about if it is spoken, isn't it? If it is spoken descriptive text, usually you start with, I'm going to tell you about my English teacher. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, but this is spoken one. Yeah, it is, you just memorize this, anak-anak. Dihafalkan saja. The first thing that you need to say when you introduce someone or you describe someone is this phrase, this lexical bundle. Satu bundel ini. Okay, and that also happen in written text. So you prepare first the sample text. You prepare the sample text, Ibu, and then you also highlight, and then you stimulate your students with blank text as we did in the beginning of my presentation. Ya, you stimulate, bahasa Indonesianya dipancing begitu. So which words that you think usually used in descriptive text and so on. Okay, so I really concerned about the developing students' writing skills is not only asking them or testing them to write, and then you just give score, but you need to do your scaffolding talk, yeah, how you make your students engage in the writing class. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Uli.
Thank you, Bu Setiorini.
Thank you very much, Bu Twistorini, for the question, and thank you very much, Prof. Uli, for the answer, and hopefully that answers Bu Twistorini's question. Okay, now let's have a look at the question in the text in the chat box. There is one question from Bapak Laksana Tri Prasetya. The question is how to teach lexical bundles for ESP because their level of proficiency is very low. Thank you, Prof. Uli.
Thank you, Bu Yuni, for reading the questions. Hello, Mas Laksana Tri Prasetya. I think I am familiar with this name because he graduated from master's program of English language education at UNES. Hello, Prasetya, Pak Prasetya, I hope you are doing well. Yes, again, Pak Prasetya, well, that's why we need to help our students. When we say that because their level of proficiency is very low, that's our job. Yeah, that's our job, how to help them to have a good level of proficiency. If what Pak Laksana Tri Prasetya asked me is the context of the reading text in ESP, English for Specific Purposes, perhaps, for example, Pak Prasetya teaches nurse students or perhaps students at the tourism department. Perhaps what you mean is that, yeah, Pak, you still have to give them reading passages a lot. Okay, because we cannot expect them to write or speak academic context without reading a lot. Okay, so we need to give a model. The model in terms of, in this case, if we are talking about written text, in this case, text. So hopefully Pak Laksana still remember the first step is building knowledge. If you are, or perhaps Pak Laksana can say something, ESP, especially in what purpose, nurse or tourism?
Yes,
So that
yes, ma'am. I think this is for education and also economic. In economy, like Islamic economics.
I see. Thank you, yeah, Pak Rastia, for the response. So you are teaching English for economic college students, yeah, Pak.
Yes.
And if you ask me the written text, of course you have some samples of written text on economics, right? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the keywords is familiarize them first with the with the terms. Okay, you can ask them to make circle or highlight or underline the specific terms for economics area, economics, economics purposes, English for economics purposes. So ask them step by step which one that you think terms belong to economics major. That's what I mean, Pak Prasetya. So start from what they have known first instead of asking what they do not know. Because the purpose is to make them like, oh yeah, I can do this. Okay. You get the point, Pak Prasetya? If my explanation is not clear, you can say something. So when you give a text, you ask them to make circle or to highlight the words that they are familiar with first, yeah. And secondly, stimulate them to identify terms in economics. Okay. And whether you want them to write academic writing in English or just stop in reading, Pak, what you mean? Sorry.
Usually I teach in the classes by encouraging the student to speak, ma'am, because their level is, that they don't know about the simple present tense, about the simple things in English, like So I start with the speaking first.
I see.
So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it doesn't matter actually whether it's written or spoken. The thing is that giving the model, if it is necessary, you yourself make a video as a model for your students, for example, introducing yourself, or perhaps you can take it from the video from the YouTube. Yeah, so expose my point is that give them as much as exposure to your students before asking them to speak. So I hope in your class you also have multimedia, ya Pak Prasetya. You can ask them to enjoy the video, the 3 or 5 minutes video of conversation, and then ask them to memorize. Bapak Ibu, personally, I think memorization and drillings are still very important step in learning language. Yeah, I do not agree if we say that drilling or memorization are very conventional method. No, yeah, because we need them, Pak Prasetya, to memorize the conversation and then do the role play before you ask them to create their own dialogue. Pak Prasetya.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Actually, I did it. I did
Oh,
that.
good.
Yeah, in my
Yeah.
classes. Yeah.
Okay. Or perhaps we need, I don't know the situation in the class. Perhaps we need to, but sometimes students have high affective filter, Pak. High affective filter in bahasa Indonesia, perasaan takut yang terlalu tinggi terhadap dosennya. So perhaps we need to show our nice facial expression or gesture instead of stern. Yeah, you know what I mean, Pak Prasetya?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
correct. Because my student ever said that, like you said before.
Yeah, so your students commented that you are too tense, yeah, Pak. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, that's
Too
right.
tense, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah. So to wrap up the book, we have the theory of second language acquisition. If the feeling of affective of the students is too high, it makes them discouraged, Pak. They feel afraid to make mistakes because they see our facial expression which are intention I mean tegang begitu ya, or angry face or something like that. So we have to, let's say, do some introspection to ourselves first.
Yes,
Yeah, Pak.
ma'am. But yeah, I actually don't know about what happened with myself. So yes, I just learn and learn how to teach in the classes. Yeah, thank you
Yes.
for your advice, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pak Prasetya, and I'm very happy to see you virtually here. I hope you get more success at your place, Pak Setya. Give my best regards to your wife.
Amin.
Yeah.
And you also, ma'am.
Amin, amin ya rabbal alamin. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Pak Prastia, for the question and Profuli for that very detailed answer to Pak Prastia's question.
Thank you
well,
if it is too detailed, yeah.
very
Thank you if it is
detailed.
too
That's very
detailed.
good. Okay, thank you very much, Profuli. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we still have a question. Someone is raising hand. However, due to very limited time, I think that we have to end our discussion session now. So probably thank you very much for that very inspiring talk and also a fruitful discussion in this session. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this fourth plenary sessions. So before I close this session, let's give applause to Profuli and for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ibu Dr. Yudi, for leading the discussion. Very nice, thank you. And thank you for the chairperson, Ibu Puji Astuti, for all the participants and presenters. Wish you luck and have a good day, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof. Wuli and the committee. Now we would like to give certificate of appreciation virtually to Prof. Wuli as the fourth plenary speaker.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thank you so much for the appreciation, the organizing committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Wuli. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the fourth plenary sessions. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And back to Ibu Ella. Thank you. Good morning.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bu Yuni. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just finished joining an engaging discussion with Professor Sri Wuli Fitriati. Thank you very much as well for Ibu Yuni, who has guided the discussion session. And now, it is a pleasure that I'm about to hand over my microphone to the moderator of the fifth plenary session, Dr. Rahayu Puji Haryanti, who will furthermore be the person in charge of the discussion. Ibu Yayu, the time is completely yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Ella. Well, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First, is my voice clear?
Yes, Ibu.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Right, we're going to present the next speaker, that is Dr. Abdul Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Yeah, it is really a great pleasure for me to lead you in a discussion with him. Well, good morning, Dr. Ali Jinnah.
Good morning,
Dr. Abdul. Well, great to see you again.
Always a pleasure, ma'am. Always a pleasure.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to read his short biography before his speech. Dr. Abdul Muhammad Ali Jinnah is an associate professor of English at Jamal Muhammad College, affiliated to Bharathidasan University, Tiruchirappalli, India. His research interest covers literary theory, pop cultural studies, and partition literature. And he seems to be very familiar with Indonesia, since he gave several keynote speeches at some universities in Indonesia. For example, when he spoke on the fountain effect and its influence on arts and literary scenario at ISI, Institute Seni Indonesia, and also hegemony and multiculturalism at the Brown Bag Seminar at Faculty of Cultural Sciences, Gajah Mada University. On post-truth literature and Trump era at University of Indonesia, and then also in IAIN Surakarta on pop culture and desi ethnic in Velvet series. And also at UNES, where he gave a workshop on travel writing, in which we result in 2 anthologies of travel literature entitled Komorebi and Resfaber. Okay, and lately he gave also a speech as a guest lecture as a guest lecturer, talking about the contribution of literature to English teaching. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today he's going to talk about humanizing cultural studies through literature. Well, Dr. Abdul will talk about around 45 minutes, and after that, there will be question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Abdul Muhammad Ali Jinnah, please.
Thank you, Dr. Rahayu. It's a pleasure to meet you again.
Great. Thank you.
And let me tell at the outset that Indonesia is a country I really love. Most of you would think that when Dr. Rahayu says that I've been to Indonesia, it would probably be virtual presentations. No, I was there in India. in Indonesia physically. This was in the year 2019 before the COVID restrictions began. So I traveled the length and breadth of Indonesia. Such a beautiful country. I went to so many different places. I spoke to so many different people, so many different universities. And let me tell you that if ever there is a heaven on earth, it is Indonesia. I loved it so much that, in fact, I told Dr. Ayu that please get me a job in Indonesia. I would work in Indonesia for some time. And we were sort of arranging that, but then COVID struck, and because of which I was not able to come over. Inshallah, one day that would happen, and I would meet all of you, physically, and we would have interactions face to face. So till then, since Allah has willed that we can meet only virtually, let's do it that way. Now, I am an English teacher in the sense that I teach literature more than the language. I was just listening to the earlier presentation, and ma'am was giving very pertinent answers to how English and the teaching of English is so essential in universities. My scope is very different. I'm, as I said, a teacher of literature. So my focus is going to be on how literature enhances, on how literature helps in the growth of individuals, and it helps in the phenomenon that is called society. Now, both our countries, both our nations, they are multicultural nations. We know the idea of multiculturalism because we have always been multicultural. We have always been repositories of so many different cultures, so many different ideas, so many different religions throughout our history, right? The same goes for Indonesia, what goes for India also. Now, when I use that term multicultural, I know that it is a celebration. At the same time, there are a few problems also which are associated with that. It's not very easy in the 21st century to be a multicultural country, politically, socially, geopolitically. There are a lot of problems that we multicultural countries face, because I think one of the major problems to multiculturalism that is arising is the idea of a monolithic culture, the idea of homogenizing cultures, the idea of making culture into one. That's very difficult. I think it's almost impossible for countries like yours and mine, because we are not singular culture, we are cultures, so many different aspects, pluralities that are put together in the definition of our culture. But that, unfortunately, some people do not understand today. And that is exactly why the study of cultural studies, especially in the humanities, has become so important. So when ELTLT offered me a chance to speak to you people, and they said that we would be having the thrust area as the idea of humanization or humanizing, I thought, okay, why not I take up this whole problematics of cultural studies and mix it with what we generally do, that is the teaching of literature, and talk about how this whole, as you said, problematics of cultural studies can be humanized or humanized, so that's exactly what is going to be the focus of my talk. It's going to be in my country, it's 7:45. I'll give you roughly a 40-minute presentation. And then after that, you can always, give me your views and your comments and your questions also. So what exactly is culture? That's a very important question. Culture is a word which many of the lexicographers have said is probably the most difficult word in the English language to define. How do you define something that is called culture? Because culture has got so many different variations in definition. Sometimes culture is used, let's say, in very colonial foregrounding. Culture is used as a framework of what is called superior versus what is called inferior. So in India, sometimes when we use that word culture or cultured, we probably are referring to an individual who belongs to a superior race or a superior caste. Caste is a big problem in India. So sometimes we use that term cultured to refer to what is called highbrow culture, and uncultured to what is referred to in the lowbrow, in the so-called inferior communities. So that is one definition of culture that we find, but then here the idea of culture is very different. Culture is part and parcel of your DNA. That's how we look at it when we use that term cultural studies. Culture is the repository of your lives. It's that tradition which sort of defines who you are. So if, for example, I am an Indian, I'm also a Muslim, and I come from a part of India that is called Tamil Nadu. So my definition within the structure of the nation that is India is that of a South Indian, Tamil, Muslim, Indian. You understand it? So my cultural identity is very fragmented, as Stuart Hall would say. I do not have a singular identity. I have at least 4 different identities, of that of a Muslim, because Muslims form a minority in India. Islam is not the major religion as it is, let's say, in Indonesia. And I come from South India, which in a way, again, is culturally and politically looked on as inferior by the North Indians, people from the North. So all your Shah Rukh Khans and, the Hindi, the Bollywood that you see, you probably are more associated with Bollywood and Hindi cinema. So that is not part of our culture. That's basically North, on above us. So they always look upon us as inferior. And Tamil is one of the most ancient languages in the world. In fact, records, authenticities have proved that it is one of the most ancient languages. There is proof to say that Tamil is the most ancient language. I belong to that culture of Tamil. But in India, it's never looked upon as the standard language. It's considered to be one of the fringe languages. So, but I'm an Indian. I'm proud to be an Indian. I'm a patriotic Indian. So, as I said, these are the difficulties in which I have to navigate in order to define myself as an Indian. I cannot simply define myself as a singular, monolithic Indian. But nowadays, the political system wants us to define ourselves in just one singular term. Now, that's very difficult. I'm sure, in Indonesia also, if someone tells you that define yourself in a singular cultural term, it's going to be very difficult for you also. So that's the whole idea that I'm talking about. The idea of how culture becomes the DNA of our individuality. Now, I might not be a very overt, let's say, Muslim, but then I am a Muslim. It cannot be taken away from me. I might not be a very overt Tamil, because for me, the language in which I am more comfortable is English. But that doesn't take away the fact that I am Tamil born, or I belong to this, this great state of Tamil Nadu. So this is the paradox that I present before you. The paradox of how the idea of a cultural identity sort of problematizes the idea of a national or a regional or a global identity as in itself. So this is the paradox, as I said, which we find ourselves caught up in. And this paradox sort of removes the idea of the human or the humane, the idea of humanity from the whole discussion of cultural studies per se. Now, for example, someone like Eric Hobsbawm, a cultural theorist, he is of the opinion that, the whole idea of culture is something that is an invention. It's man-made, it's artifice. Many of us would love to believe that culture is something that is, natural. It's been there, present, even before the birth or the evolution of humanity, as you want to say. But Hobsbawm and the others, they say that it's not so. It's us. We have sort of invented culture. We have invented our tradition. So therefore, culture is simply an artifice. Then why do we have such a big hue and cry about it? Why do we harp so much about culture? Why do we fight over culture? Why are there so many violences because of culture? Why do so many people die or are killed? Or, nations break apart because of the idea of culture. Remember, India is one of those nations, for those of you who do not know, India is one of those nations which was actually cleaved apart by the British. When, the colonization process became extinct, they broke India into 3 different nations, 2 in the beginning. And one part of India became the nation today, that is Pakistan. And after a couple of decades, another part of India that became the nation that is called Bangladesh. Now, what is the difference? It became a religious difference. Culturally, we were the same. They were also part of India for millennia. But because of the intervention, let's say, of the culture of religion, what happens is India was cleaved apart. It's no longer the India of old, the mighty India of old. One part of India has now become another nation. Another part of India has become another nation. So you see, sometimes religion can lead to differences which can become irreconcilable. Differences that can never be reversed. So we understand the pain of cultural differences. We understand the pain of how sometimes differences in culture or in tradition can lead to so much of a volatile situation that countries are simply, as I said, broken apart. Countries simply disintegrate. Now, if we go through the idea of culture through, let's say, someone like Eric Hobsbawm, maybe our problems would not be so intrinsic. Maybe our problems would be simplified, because all we have to understand is that culture is ultimately just an invention. Culture is ultimately just a man-made tradition. How simplified it would be if we can understand that. Now, I'm going to quote another cultural theorist whose name is Roy Wagner, who talks about the invention of culture per se. Now, the whole idea of invention is something very interesting, because the invention of tradition of, of our culture that happened right, in the beginning of evolution, has today become something that is very natural, something that has become an intrinsic part of our system, and it's something that is very unshakable. We are not able to shake our traditions. We are not able to, give up our culture, simply because, as I said, it's a part of our DNA. Jung talks about the idea of a racial unconscious or atavism. So culture or the racial unconscious is something that sort of defines us even when we move away from it. I've heard of Indians who, go and settle down in the West. They go to US, they go to, London or to the Scandinavian countries. They become so far apart from India geographically, but the psychological pull of the culture of their homeland is so strong that over there also, sometimes over there, they become more culturally pure and more culturally, addictive than they actually were here in India. In India, they would have probably forgotten their culture. But in the West, when they go and settle down there, they sort of, become fervent devotees of their culture. Now, this is the paradox, as I said, we have to look at when we have to understand the whole idea of cultural studies, how culture sort of defines us, and how the idea of culture has to be studied, especially by the humanities, that is, teachers and students of, literature, especially you and I. So from here, we have to ask ourselves a very important question. Maybe there is no simple answer for this, but we need to ask ourselves this question. The idea of culture. I mean, we live in the time of information. We live in the time of Google. And Google always gives us the idea or the definition of what is called popular culture, of what is called dominant culture, or how culture sort of dominates our lives today. So, given such a scenario, given such a context, we need to ask ourselves this question: is culture simply a manufacture? Because when I use that term manufacture, I know it's a problematic because it becomes a idea of commercialization, right? The idea of how, it becomes a factory produce, or it becomes a sort of a mechanization. I want you to look at culture that way, especially when it comes to this question. I want us to sort of, break out of our comfort zones, because as I said, both our countries are very strong on culture. Your culture, the Indonesian culture is very strong. It has got a great heritage, no doubt about it. But I just want us to look at culture in a very contemporary take, a contemporary perspective, and try to understand the idea of culture as a manufacture. Now, because we teach aesthetics, and in aesthetics, we teach them literature, we teach them paintings, arts, visual arts, and even the musical arts. Now, I'm asking you a very fascinating question. What do you think is the most famous painting in the world? We know about paintings. What do you think is the most famous painting in the world? I'm sure there is only one answer, right? I know there are Indonesian paintings, there are Indian paintings, but even as students of literature, we know about our culture, we know about our, arts, but this question has just one answer, and that answer is Mona Lisa. Whenever someone talks about painting, the one word that comes to us is Mona Lisa. Have you ever thought that when this question is being asked to us, have you ever thought, as students of literature, as students who belong to a particular culture, a very rich culture, have you ever thought that, wait a minute, why am I giving this answer? Why should I say it's Mona Lisa? Because Mona Lisa doesn't belong to my culture. Mona Lisa is part of a European culture. It's Italian. Why don't I just, take a break and say that, okay, fine. This painting from my culture is the most important painting. I mean, the whole idea of which is the most important, which is the most popular, which is the best, it's all very subjective, right? I mean, if someone asks you which is the best movie in the world, you would probably come up with an answer that is yours, a movie that you have seen, a movie that you have liked. But why is it that when it is a question like, painting, we immediately go to the Mona Lisa or, other paintings? Now, this is a question that I'm asking you. Is it that, the whole idea of Mona Lisa being the best painting in the world is simply a manufacture? It's being thrust upon you, it's being branded, and it's being, brought into you're being brainwashed into saying that Mona Lisa is the most famous painting because of, all that media invasion that comes to us. I mean, you go to Google, it will tell you which is the best painting in the world. The first thing that they will show is Mona Lisa. And we are basically a Google generation. So is it possible that our ideas are formed by Google? Is it possible that our ideas about culture are also being informed by Google? Now, this is the question. I want you to understand another very interesting factor. Till 1972, please listen carefully. Till 1972, Mona Lisa was not considered to be the best painting in the world. When this question was asked, till 1972, Nobody answered that it is Mona Lisa. Then how did suddenly, let's say in 50 odd years, how did suddenly Mona Lisa become the most famous painting? Because in 1972, it was stolen. It went missing from the Louvre Museum. One fine day, they went into the room, and in that time, the Mona Lisa room, as we know today, didn't have too many paintings. I mean, sorry, it had a lot of paintings. Today, Mona Lisa is singular. But at that time, there were so many paintings, they didn't even notice the Mona Lisa. And then one fine day, it went missing. It was a hectic search for it. They got it back. And once they got it back, suddenly the Mona Lisa became popular. You understand? Not because of its artistic finesse. It's because one day it got stolen. And one day it was returned. So suddenly it found itself in the limelight. Suddenly everyone started talking about the Mona Lisa, and slapdash, today it is the most famous painting in the world. Now, this is exactly what I would say is an idea of an invented tradition. Suddenly you find yourselves popular. It's called 60 seconds of fame, right? Suddenly you find yourself popular. Suddenly you become worthy, and your value sort of increases. Now, this you would find in so many different cultural phenomenons which sort of abound you. Now, I'm sure cricket is not your game. In Indonesia, probably you do not play cricket. But in India, cricket is it's not officially the national game, but we are crazy over cricket. You probably do not even know the cricketers' names, but here every newborn child would know the names of cricketers. And for us, the players of cricket, they are considered to be gods. We worship them. We sort of, maybe for you it's badminton. I'm not very sure, but I'm sure the Indonesians play badminton really well. For India, we are great in cricket. I mean, every street, every lane, every child, we are born and brought up with cricket bats. We play cricket. And cricket has become a game that is synonymous with India. Today, India is a superpower when it comes to cricket. I mean, we are the best. Of course, the Pakistanis would not agree when I say this. But for me, I would really be proud to say that, Indians are one of the best when it comes to cricket. We have a huge rivalry going on with our neighboring country of Pakistan. So who is the best player of cricket? And, our rivalry is something of a legend. Now, I just want us to understand the whole idea of cricket, because cricket was an import to us from England. It came to us from England at a time when England was our colonial master. So the history of cricket in India is not a very happy history. The history of cricket in India is very notorious, it's very bloody. It didn't come to us in a very happy situation. The British brought cricket over here so that they could play and they could enjoy. But most of us Indians were simply used to as ball pickers. When they hit the ball and when it went out of the ground, we Indians were employed to pick that ball and give it over to them. We were menial servants for the players of the masters who were playing cricket then. But we never consider the bloody history of cricket in India today, because as I said, it's our madness, it's our frenzy. Why do we forget that? Why is it that, a history that is so fraught with violence is being forgotten, and something becomes a part of our culture, as I said, of our intrinsic culture, even though, it is so fraught with a history of violence, with a history of marginalization, with a history of oppression. How can we forget that? So this is the problem with culture. Because culture, as we undertake it today, in the present scenario, as we take it over today, sometimes we forget the history of culture. I would love to point that about English literature also. We are all, teachers of English, and we use English textbooks. And the so-called English textbooks that we use many a times is what we would call, or what they would call, as canonical literature, the classical literature of yore. So we have Wordsworth or Keats or Shelley or Byron or, any one of those great writers we use as textbooks in our classrooms. I'm not sure whether this is happening in Indonesia, but for us, a study of literature would always entail a 60% study of the classics. So when I use that word classics, I'm using that word with a lot of confusion, because most of these classics, as we term them, are British classics, not Indian classics. Those are the British classics. But what is the background of those British classics is something which we never question, because most of the British writers whom we read today and we pass on to our next generation were, in many ways, at least their mindsets were colonial. They believed very firmly in the idea of a master race. The British race, they considered to be the master race, and the Indian race, they always considered to be very, very inferior. So they believed that they were destined to rule over us. They believed that any violence that was perpetuated on, let's say, the Indians was justifiable, because the Indians were considered to be savages. The Indian race was considered to be savage. Now, these are the problematics. Do we ever teach them the background of this? Because we sort of, just negate that that background, and we don't teach them that at all. So how do our children grow? How do they imbibe the idea of culture without the idea of the past from where the culture comes? So cricket is something which I see as that. And unfortunately, our subject is something which I definitely see as that. Because these are the writers who belong to a race at that particular moment when they had this mad race for colonization. When they were coming over to our nations, our great nations, and they were colonizing us, and they were using, the methodologies of violence against us. So this is where I sort of draw a line. And I ask myself a question. So in that sense, is it true that culture, as the question of the slide goes, is simply a manufacture? Because we have manufactured the idea of culture ourselves. And the question goes again to the idea of hyper-reality. And are we seeing culture simply as a spectacle? Okay, what is the most dominant image of Indian culture? And immediately the one monument that usually comes to everyone's mind is the Taj Mahal. So everyone talks about the Taj Mahal as an epitome of Indian culture. I'm sure for you it is the the various temples which are part of your landscape. For example, the Borobudur temple. Now these become, as I said, the symbols of our culture. But unfortunately, in the mad race for the commodification of culture, sometimes these monuments, which are part of our heritage, simply become mechanical reproductions. They become part of those facades which we use to lure the tourists. Every tourist who comes over to India flocks to flocks over to the Taj Mahal. They see only the Taj Mahal. There are so many other innumerable monuments which make up the heritage of India. Nobody bothers about them. It's those few, as I said, symbols of culture which become predominant and which sort of, become the focus or the limelight of cultural tourism. I think that's an ironical word which we need to consider. The idea of cultural tourism. See, for example, your state of Bali is considered to be probably one of the best examples of cultural tourism. All these foreigners, they come over to Bali because, they have been brought up with the idea that Bali is a mystical place. It's a timeless place. It's one of the jewels of the Orient. Now, these are the stereotypes based on which the white tourists, they come over to Bali. Similarly, in India, there are a lot of places, for example, Kerala, our neighboring country. Rahaya ma'am knows about Kerala because when she visited India, she came first to Tamil Nadu and then she was, taken over to Kerala. Again, a very beautiful state. But just like your Bali, Kerala is also sort of exoticized and it is presented as I said, the stereotypical image of the timeless Orient. Now, the idea of timeless Orient is a cultural product of the colonial times. That's the most interesting sometimes, but also the most painful aspect of this phenomenon of cultural tourism. So what basically is happening is a kind of a spectacle that is created and everything becomes just like a reality show. I'm sure our generation is something that has grown up watching endless reality shows, but that's on TV, that's on the small screen. But then every day, every hour, in many of these so-called stereotypical timeless places, exotic places, tourist places, what is happening is simply a spectacle, a reality show. And that is for money. So culture is being manufactured, culture is being commodified, culture is being thrown at the faces of these tourists because it becomes a spectacle. And then, of course, the whole idea of the body, from the political, from the social, we come down to the individual, and there is this whole idea of the appropriation of the body as a cultural body in itself. Have you have you ever come across photographs of the colonial times when the British photographers or the colonial photographers would probably have made the native stand and click the picture, and that picture would form one of the illustrations of their books, travel books. Then you would understand what I'm trying to talk about, because the native would have absolutely no idea of what is happening. There would be a look of anguish on the native's face and a look of confusion, and that particular confusion would be etched onto the illustration for a permanent record of the natives' unwillingness. That would, what they say, unwillingness for getting into a cultural or a civilized normative. Now, don't you ever think that this is over? Because even today in cultural tourism, they make use of all these performances where the native performer's body becomes an appropriation of the pop cultural phenomenon. Doesn't it happen when these tourists, when they come over to the cultural spots, they are shown performances of indigenous dances, indigenous performances, and these performances are clipped and they are taken over to the West, and then they are shown to their friends. And these friends, they say, wow, is this what the natives are? And in one way, a whole stereotype of a pop cultural phenomenon of the body is being created, it's being invented. Now, this is what I would call an appropriation, because that's exactly what we do. An appropriation of the body. And then, of course, when we talk about the appropriation of the body, we also need to talk about the idea of body shaming also. You see, the Britishers or the Westerners, they have a system. This is how their bodies are. Our bodies are very different. Our noses are different, our colors are different, our eyes are different, our hair is different. It's never up to their standards. So everything is considered to be inferior. The Indian color, for example, is considered to be inferior to the color of the British. The Asian nose is always considered to be something funny compared to their noses. The Afro hair is considered to be inferior. You know, every part of our bodies is always deemed to be the other. It's deemed to be something very inferior. So that is the cultural shock of body shaming, which for us, I think it's mostly a regular occurrence, especially when we are in the West. The idea of body shaming becomes so pronounced because our bodies obviously are so different. Now, this whole idea of body shaming also comes from the idea of cultural difference in itself. So you understand, my dear friends, the whole system of cultural prejudice is something that plays against us in every single factor. Now, that's the point that I'm trying to make, how it sort of plays against us and how in that it creates what is called the idea of a cultural power. We have, Anthony Gramsci, who talks about hegemony. And here we use that term, hegemony, and we talk about the hegemonization of culture. All those Western movies and, Western media that infiltrate into our minds, that infiltrate into our homes, they give us the idea that our culture is in some way or the other insignificant when you consider it with their culture. So it's always the Western culture which is given to us as, the better or the superior or something that has to be emulated. Don't you find our own children of today emulating Western culture more than following our own cultural systems? I mean, India, it has changed so much. I'll give you a very small example. A very small, probably some would say a very insignificant example, but when you consider it, it's not that insignificant. In India, the idea of cuisine has basically changed. For example, every day morning, we used to take, breakfast, which was very indigenous. So we have, probably Rahayu ma'am knows, we have this idea of idlis. We every morning we eat what would be called steamed rice cakes. I'm sure you also have that. Steamed rice cakes is something which you also have. We also have that. We call them idlis. And these steamed rice cakes are eaten with two kinds of chutneys. Basically coconut, chili, salt, and a few spices is ground together, mixed together, made into a paste, and it is kept in the plate along with that idli, the steamed rice cake. And this is our staple breakfast. Okay, I'm talking about South India, Tamil Nadu, especially Tamil Nadu. But today, the concept of idli has almost evaporated. It's almost gone. The generation of today is no longer bothered. It's no longer interested in eating idlis. Rather, they are more interested in eating noodles, instant noodles. I'm sure for your countries, noodles is something that, is a staple part of your diet. I'm not negating that, or I'm not questioning that. I'm talking about the noodles, instant noodles that come to us from the West. Of course, I have eaten Indonesian noodles also. I love them. That they are different. The Eastern varieties of noodles which come from Malaysia, Indonesia, China, Korea, they are very different. I'm talking about, Maggi noodles, which comes from Europe or from the West. Instant noodles, which can be made in 2 minutes. Maybe you might not be able to relate to that so much as we do, because for us, it's a big part of our anguish, because it's not part of our culture. Idlis are part of our culture, but idlis have sort of, absolutely disappeared. Maybe another generational shift or so, the whole idea of idlis would simply vanish. There would be no more idlis. It would be made as a rarity for cultural tourism. You know, when tourists come over to India, to South India, to Tamil Nadu, probably, they would be served 1 or 2 idlis as a factor, a cultural factor, which they need to sort of, experience. Now, this is something very painful. A lot of Tamil cultural groups are actually fighting against this. They say that, we need to retain our indigenous cultures, but it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Then another cultural play that we need to understand, because we talk about cultural differences so much. So I have 10 minutes more. So another cultural play that, is part of our identities today is the play of cultural differences between the East and the West. I know I have been sort of harking to it and building, my arguments towards this in so many different cultural differences in many of my slides. But I am basically talking about how the whole idea of cultural difference or the cultural play of differences has become so significant post 9/11. Now, 9/11 was a signpost in the sense that, it really changed the world. And post 9/11, the destruction, we find that, the whole idea of East versus West has become more and more predominant. So that is what one cultural theorist, Mahmood Madani, says that, how cultural play of differences has become more significant, more accentuated post 9/11. And it's not that it's happening only in the US or, in the Western part of the world. It's happening over here also. Even in India, you find that very significant change post 9/11 because a particular community is now being looked on, branded as the enemy community. I don't have to give names. I'm sure we understand when I use that term because it's something that happened somewhere, but the images were filtered down to India, to our countries. And especially in India, it so happened that these visuals, they sort of transformed our societies in so many significant ways. So problems have been persistent, but there was a time when, our two communities, they existed on very friendly terms. But today, what is happening is the cultural divides are so significant and so irreversible that a particular community is being branded as the enemy or the terrorist community.
Excuse me, 5 more minutes, sir.
Just 5 more minutes? Okay, I'll finish. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. So this leads to so many disturbing questions. For example, David Vincent asks this question of a multicultural Britain that another 50 years, Britain, he says, would become Islamic. So he asked this question to the mainstream Britishers, what would be your children's future under Islamic Britain? Now, I know this is a trivial question because I know it's very exaggerated, but for some, it's a very disturbing question because they ask this, what if it really happens? So what happens to our children's future, the white man's children, under Islamic Britain? So when these kind of questions are being asked, the whole idea of multiculturalism is collapsed. It sort of, becomes a facade. It becomes a lie. So what, in such terms, are the future of multicultural countries like yours and mine? Because we are multicultural, but today they call it multicultural. So this problematics is something I believe, something that can be solved by literature. So one aspect of understanding culture is through travel. And one of your thrust areas was travel writing. Just imagine the idea of travel and how through travel you become a part of all that you have seen and known. I'm of course paraphrasing Ulysses, Tennyson's masterful poem, where Ulysses says that I cannot rest from travel. I need to travel. Travel is for me a kind of a knowledge, an arc. So I think travel writing is something that makes us understand different cultures, and through the understanding of different cultures, we sort of become more accustomed.
Okay. Hello. Seems that Dr. Abdul has an internet problem. Okay. We are waiting for a while. Try to contact him. Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Abdul is trying to rejoin. Would you please wait for a while? Okay, anyway, after this time is up and you are invited to ask questions. Yeah, okay, there, Dr. Abdul is back. Yes, please go on, sir. Okay, we still have around 2 minutes. Yeah, or time is up. Yeah, okay, anyway, go on, go close it.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Just a couple of minutes more because I've come to the last slide. So that is travel writing, and from travel writing, I'm just trying to give you other examples like children's literature. I think children should be exposed to the reading of texts from other cultures. Many of us, I'm sure, would have grown with the reading of, let's say, text from Britain, text from US. And the more we read, the more we understand the culture, and the more we understand the culture, the better becomes our exposure to the world culture. I think it is people who read who become better, as I said, citizens of the world. So that is something I think we should be giving our children. But sadly, today, the whole art of reading is going down. As teachers of literature, we need to bring back that art of reading, bring back the habit of reading, and make our children read a lot. because reading is something that makes us truly multicultural. And then, of course, we need to understand that canonical literature is no longer going to work, because canonical literature has a bloody history. We need to understand how we have to mainstream fringe literature, literature that has always been kept on the boundaries, that has always been relegated to the sidelines. We need to bring them, and we need to use them as examples of, understanding the world. So this, I mean, science fiction literature or detective literature or horror literature, which I think is the future for many of us. Bring them into the mainstream, bring them into the main fold, expose our children to them, because they basically are those literatures which sort of, embrace so many different cultures. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to, share my experiences with you. Of course, the field is now open for any questions or debates.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Abdul, for the presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for question and answer. We still have around 5 minutes, please. Yeah, Mr. Henricus Joko Lianto. Dr. Henricus, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Bu Rahayu. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdul Jina. My name is Henricus from UNES. Thank you very much for the great presentation. So I have a quick question about, what do you think about culture itself? Is it culture something always something positive, or it might also have, like what you said, the hegemony of culture, especially during this present globalization? As you know that now there will be a threat of like artificial intelligence. So what do you think about that? If sooner or later artificial intelligence will be part of world culture,
it's already part of our culture.
Yes,
that's a very
right.
interesting question. That's a very interesting take,
Yes.
because how far is culture today natural is a very interesting question, because artificial intelligence has already seeped into our culture.
Yes.
In fact, the other day I was reading about how in cultural tourism now they are using digitalized voices rather than human voices. There is one very important heritage site in India. It's in Rajasthan, one of our oldest sites. It seems they are no longer using human guides. They actually hand over cassettes to you and, all these earphones. And all you have to do is listen to that, and you go to a particular spot, you stand there and you listen to that. It's no longer, your question actually is sort of, leading us towards dehumanizing of cultural studies. But it's a very interesting question. And
I just
it's
read the
part
book
of our future.
Yes.
It's here to stay. It's going to be
Yes.
there.
Yes.
In some days, you know what? Borobudur would be having robotic guides.
Oh yeah, that's right. And also Bali, Bali, as you mentioned, Bali also part of cultural destination, a worldwide cultural destination. And I have just read the book by Herbert G. Gans. Maybe I can share it to Ibu Yayu too later. This is it's old book, but very interesting. The title is Pop Culture and High Culture. Pop Culture and High Culture. Yes. So, what do you think about that? Whether which cultural products belong to high culture, and I know pop culture like mass culture, like probably also music, films that belong to pop culture, and also digital technology itself is a kind of mass culture, right, Doctor?
That's true. That's true.
Yes, right.
You're asking a very difficult question to an Indian, actually. Because in India, we have a huge problem with this classification of culture. See, in India, we have a very hierarchical caste-based system. So there are certain castes which are on the top of the hierarchy. And there are certain castes which come in the middle, and some who come in the, the lowest of the low. Now, it so happens that those who are on the top of the hierarchy, they constitute only 2% of the population. And those who fall on the lowest part of the hierarchy, they constitute somewhere around 90% of the population. Okay. I'm just trying to give you the logistics of it. And it is this 2% of the population whose culture is considered to be the high culture, whose culture is considered to be the most representative culture. So the whole idea of high culture and mass culture in India is very problematic. We are actually fighting over it. There are fighting in the sense it's not just political debates. It's not just debates of the verbal kind. We are actually fighting over it. There are mass protests. There are unfortunately there are a lot of violences also which happen over this. Every day in India, in some part of India or the other, we are having killings and it's very unfortunate. But most of these violences, they happen because of these classifications which have existed in India for time immemorial. As long as India has existed, the idea of caste has existed, the idea of high culture versus low culture has always existed. And today we are trying to remove those words of high culture. So even a word like high culture versus mass culture is problematic for India. Because I'll tell you why. Because the whole idea of mass culture is also something that is appropriated by the high cultures, the so-called high cultures.
Yes.
So it's not that, mass culture is something that belongs to the hoi polloi or the, common man. The common man has no say. The common man's culture has got absolutely no say. It's not a representation at all. So when you ask me this question, it becomes very painful for me because I'm trying to explain to you.
Yeah, what about traditional people?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Pak Hendrikus. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Well,
time
I
is
messed
up.
up.
Yeah, okay.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very
No.
much, Dr. Abdul. Yes.
I'm so happy that you asked me this question. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Buyayu.
Thank you, Dr. Hendrikus Jokolianto. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Jinnah. Well, actually, Dr. Abdul has presented a very hot topic, and intrigued a lot of questions from the audience. However, time is limited, so I'm sorry. Maybe we can continue it in another discussion.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Jinnah, for the inspiring.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, see you again some other time.
We will definitely meet once again.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's give applause to Dr. Abdul Jinnah. Okay.
Thank you.
And by this, let me give the microphone back to the MC. Thank you very much. Mbak Umi Nolaila, please.
Thank you, Ibu Yayu. And now it's time for us to give a token of appreciation to our plenary speaker.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just finished joining an engaging discussion with Dr. Abdul Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Thank you very much as well for Ibu Yayu, who has guided the discussion session. As we have finished having insightful discussion in the 4th and the 5th plenary sessions, all presenters and participants now may prepare for the parallel session. And for all the presenters, if you have already found in which room and session you belong to, you may go directly to the breakout room. And for the participant, you may choose which room you are interested to join. On behalf of the committee, I would like to thank all of you for making time in your busy schedule to participate in the event. It's been our pleasure to host this conference. See you around sometime in the following year. Wish you all a pleasant day. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main room of our ELTLT conference 2023. Thank you for your great contribution throughout the conference. I wish that we could meet again in our next ELTLT conference. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to once again appreciate your contribution and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ibu. Bye.
Thank you.